Hello, friend. What you're about to watch right now is my masterclass on side projects. Last year in 2023, I gave a talk on side projects at the N26 office in Berlin for the Berlin Product Designers Meetup. During this talk, I shared the story of how I started Product Disrupt, my most successful side project until now. This project helped me build a career in design, and it took me on a road less traveled. Here's what the people who joined us live had to say about the talk. So, without further ado, I give you my talk on side projects. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for showing up in this sunny evening. We haven't had many sunny days in Berlin, but now we have it. Um, Today, we are going to be talking about how to build a career in design or really anything with side projects. My name is Darshan. My last name is Gajra. That's right, it's pronounced as Gajra, not like how Germans like to pronounce it. It's not Gayara. But it's okay. It doesn't bother me that much. You can butcher it. I would still be nice to you. I love my German friends. Um, I'm a designer and maker living in Berlin. I have been living in Berlin for about 4 years now. I moved here right before the pandemic. It was a very unfortunate time to move. The city was closed for about 1.5 years. I didn't really get to have the feel for the city. But then I used that time to see the places around Berlin. When you live in a city, you usually want to travel elsewhere, but you never really take time to see the city that you live in. But because of this time, I was forced to do that. And there's a lot of green spaces around Berlin. You can go for a lot of hikes and bike trips. So I really loved that, and I'm grateful for that. Um, I currently head design at HighGraph. HighGraph is a Series B startup. It's a headless CMS company. I joined HighGraph about 3.5 years ago, so right after I moved to Berlin. Um, when I joined HighGraph, it was a very small company, only about 20 odd people, mostly engineers and people in the commercial org. Engineers were building stuff, and the commercial people were selling stuff, as easy as it goes. There was no design. When I joined, I was the first designer there. So it was a very exciting time to join because I got to do a lot of things. And ultimately, as the company grew, we grew in revenue. We had two funding rounds, and I started building the design function. So now we are a team of about 6 people, small and mighty team. I call them mighty because even though it's a small team, we have all different skill sets like product design, brand design, motion graphic design. Actually, a motion graphics designer is here to support me, Sudipto. Um, and it's a it's a small team. Um, we are not hiring at the moment. Otherwise, I would have also put a plug of hiring. And I've been working on a side project called as Product Disrupt. I will tell you a little bit more about this as we go in the session. This is what's on the menu today. We are going to be learning a shared understanding of what a side project is, or at least what it means to me. I will give you the backstory of Product Disrupt. We will talk about some of the perks of side projects. There's going to be a very important disclaimer right in the middle of the session, so watch out for that. We will be looking at some inspiration and some ideas. Say if you get inspired by the talk and then you want to actually build your side project, then we will also be talking about the practical sides of it. How do you actually go about building your own? So if you go online, you'd find numerous definitions of what a side project is. And I'm sure if you ask ChatGPT, it would also give you a different version of the answer to each one of you. You should actually try it. But this is how I define side project. For me, it's an expression of creativity. Most of us have a full-time job. Some of us are lucky that we get to actually do the job that we really enjoy and we are passionate about. But in a lot of cases, you don't get to do that, but we all have bills to pay. So we do a full-time job, and then we try to find different outlets for expressing our creativity. And even if you really love your job, a job is still a job. It can get boring sometimes. You still want to do new things, learn new things, but you cannot do at a job. So that's when you try to play on the internet, do some other stuff. It doesn't really have to be internet stuff, it can be anything. But you're just finding an outlet for your creativity, right? And as creative people, I'm assuming that most of you are designers here. We are creative, and if we don't really get the space to express our creativity, it bothers us inside and it comes out in ways that we don't like. So I always try to find ways to express my creativity. A side project should feel like play to you. It can feel like work to other people because maybe they are not as passionate about a certain topic as you are. But if it feels like work to you, then of course you're going to have a hard time working on that side project because then it ultimately becomes work. It has to be exciting, at least to you, and at least in the beginning. Only then you're going to find the motivation to work on that side project. It can start as something which is very casual, doesn't have to be serious in the nature. If it's actually serious and if you sit down and come up with this grand plan, you're going to get so demotivated just by looking at all the things that you have to do. There's a chance that you might not even start. And we all know that we don't want to do that, right? And it's a journey, it's not a destination. I think usually with grand plans, you think that you are going to build something and take over the world. We have enough people these days who want to take over the world. I'm sure you don't want to be the other person who just tries to do that. And it's a journey. You're going to learn a lot of things on the way. You would have a lot of different experiences. So I would always say that think of it as a journey and try to enjoy it. This is my side project, Product Disrupt. It's a curated list of resources to learn design or even build your own digital products. It's it was mostly targeted towards people who wanted to get started in design, but I've tried to keep the list up to date so that anyone who is in design, irrespective of what level you are at, you can still find something useful. It also has a newsletter that I send out every 2 weeks with fresh resources. Um, Here you would find resources like design blogs, podcasts, YouTube channels, UI kits, a lot that you can use. Now you might be thinking that why even create a project like this? I'll tell you the story behind Product Disrupt. And for this, we will need to go a little back in the time. Um, it was year 2017, if I remember it correctly. I was already 2 years into my product design job, but I actually studied computer engineering. And at that time, it was not even a thing in India. There were some people who were doing design, but nobody really knew about the term UI, UX, or product design. And that's why, of course, people did not have any awareness of it. But I used to make websites, and for me, the most fun part about making a website was actually getting to design the website and then, of course, coding it. I was doing both, but I always enjoyed the part where I was designing. So I started digging into it. I started thinking that if I can actually do this as a job, and eventually I landed on UI, UX, product design. I started learning this from the internet. I think that I was not going to be in a position where I could have the best teachers, at least physically or in person. But then there's internet, right? If you are motivated enough, you can really find anything on the internet and you can teach yourself to learn anything really. So I went to the internet to get the best of the best. And there are enough kind people out there who share their work, they share the case studies, they share the inner workings of their projects. They were doing a lot of articles. They were writing these deep case studies. I was just trying to look at that, dissect it, and see how it really works for me. I was doing a lot of copy work as well, where I would see something, I would try to replicate that on the way I would learn something. Nowadays, there are a lot of content creators. There's a lot of content out there. I think that's also why curation is even more important. But at the time, weren't many resources. So I was just looking at the resources on a regular basis and ultimately training myself to become a designer. But most of my friends, they were still engineers. And I kept in touch with them. I used to share my work. They used to see that their friend is living a life of a designer. They would sometimes see the glamorous part of it, but they would obviously not get to see behind the scenes. And they were always curious about what I really even do at a day job and why are people paying me money for it. And they used to always ask me questions about tell me what is product design? How do you learn product design? If I want to get into it, what do I do? And that's when I realized that this question became a repetitive one. And you realize that when someone is asking you something many a times, and even better if many more people are asking you that, there's something that you can do for them. So that's why I created this website. I already had the resources. I just had to put it in a way where they can actually consume it and they can start learning from it on their own. And that's why I started created Product Disrupt. And also, I mentioned that I learned a lot from the internet, right? I call myself an internet-made designer. I always had this urge from within that I'm taking so much from the internet, I'm taking so much from the communities. I want to give back. And this was my way of giving back. I have to show you the numbers of this project so that you start taking this talk seriously. Um, it's been 6 years and counting since I made this project. It's only started as a simple website, but it slowly grew into a bi-weekly newsletter. There's a talent network as well. It's a matchmaking platform where I connect designers with hiring managers or design managers. They help each other out. There's also a community, not a formalized community, but there are people who connect with each other through this brand name. And I've continued working on it. It has also started generating revenue. Uh, for me, if I really wanted to keep working on this, I needed to make it sustainable because I was putting a lot of man hours into this. And initially, I was actually losing money on it because, of course, you have to pay for the hosting, you have to pay for the domain, you have to pay for the monthly subscription of an email service provider, so all those things. Ultimately, I started monetizing it, and that was my way of making it sustainable. So it made 8,000 in revenue in 2022. Before that, it was 4,000. Before that, it was only 100. So you can see that it keeps on growing. And if I spend more time on it, I hope that it will grow even further. But it's not a big number. It's just a number that allows me to work on it. Um, the newsletter has about 4,900 subscribers now. It has been featured on many places, but some of the notable ones are Product Hunt, Code Drops, Muesli, Panda. Some of these publications are actually the publications that I was referring to when I was learning design. And it obviously feels great that they also showcase your product now. And it feels like life has come full circle. Um, but the most important stat for me is actually the last one, which is it has made countless careers. I cannot really put a finger on this about how many careers it actually made. But from time to time, I get messages like this, and this is what makes it worth working on. So this is a friend of mine. She's based in Bangalore in India. Bangalore is like the Silicon Valley of India. She's a design manager, and she was recently in the hiring process where she was hiring a couple of people on her team. And when she was interviewing them, she used to always ask them that where do you go for inspiration or what is your primary source of inspiration? And most of the people told her that they have subscribed to Product Disrupt and that feels enough. Like they get everything that they want from there. That was a great testament for me. And I've received more messages like this. And this is why I tell people that when you work on something, put it online. Once you put something online, it takes a life of its own and it can really change the trajectory of your career. So messages like this, it always motivate me. And that's why I always want to be approachable so people can come and just tell me things. Now, how did I build it? That's the obvious question, right? Enough about the numbers. So what you see now, if you go to productdisrupt.com, it's not the first version that I had created. The first version looked very different. But I didn't really rocket science this or spend a lot of time into building it. In the first version, I downloaded a HTML framework, which was for $49. It felt a lot to me at the time because I was just getting started and the number was still big for me, but it was just a $49 framework that I was using. And I came from engineering, right? I could code websites. So that framework gave me a kickstart, and then I could just make a website out of it. I customized the design. Actually, I changed it quite a lot. And I was also using this as a way to learn something, right? So I made a cool website where there were particles because it's disrupt, right? So I put particles in the header, and it was actually using the I think the gyroscope of your mobile. If you actually if you shake your mobile, you would see the particles moving, and that was the idea of disrupt. So I learned a little bit about JavaScript and doing that animation as well. And it only took me about 16 hours. I worked on it on the weekend, and I just made it on my own, and it was built in private. Uh, People just asked me questions. I was not very involved in communities or very active online, so I was not really sharing a lot of work. I was mostly building stuff in private. And for the second version, it was a $24 code export in Webflow. So I created the website in Webflow. I took help from some of my friends. And Webflow has this nice thing where if you pay one-time fee, it's actually a subscription fee, but I could just export the code in that price, and then I could just host it for free on Netlify. So now I don't have to pay the hosting fees. One downside is that I can't really make a lot of changes to it in the Webflow editor because it doesn't live there anymore. So I have to do it manually in HTML, CSS, but that's okay. I don't really make a lot of changes. It's mostly content update, and that's easier to tweak. You'd be seeing a pattern over here, right? I'm very cheap that way. I always go for very simple solutions. Um, and I built this gradually over the period of 3 years after getting a lot of feedback from people who are using it. Now, of course, if it had not really taken off and if people were not using it, I would have not gotten any feedback, and maybe that project would have died over there. But it had taken a life of its own, and I was getting feedback, so I continued working on it. And I took the help of community. I got active on Twitter. I got active in other design communities as well. People gave me feedback. So I took that feedback and built this new version. And of course, it was much more comprehensive than the first one. The first one was just a simple website with like 4 or 5 categories of resources. But in the second one, you would see that it has many more resources. But mind you, it's still not a it's not like an exhaustive list where you would find every single resource on the internet. It's much more opinionated. I spend a lot of time going through these resources even today, and only if I find it useful, then I share it with people because it's just my take on it. I'm not trying to create like a huge directory. And also, there's enough noise on the internet nowadays, right? So it becomes very hard to find the good stuff. So this is just my way of finding the good stuff. And this was built in public. So I had created a thread on Twitter where I just started sharing the things that I was working on when I upgraded the domain or when I started working on the designs. I had the first version of it. I took feedback, and that thread was just like a live roadmap. And because of that thread, I was able to ship it. So I lost motivation a lot of times while I was working on this, but because it was there on Twitter and I promised that I'm working on this so this would be delivered, there were some annoying people constantly messaging me in DMs saying that, hey, dude, you promised us this website. Where the fuck is the website? And that was very motivating for me. So this is the first version of the product disrupt. It's a Easter egg. So if you just go to productdisrupt.com/v1, you can still see the first version. I just left it there, so people who are like the first users, they can still see that, and it's just my way of being little creative there. Uh, when I had created this, a friend of mine posted this on Product Hunt. Product Hunt was new at the time, but it was popular enough in the niche circles. And to my surprise, it actually became #1 product of the day. There are legit products on Product Hunt, but this somehow resonated. And because this became #1 product of the day, I got a lot of feedback from there. There was a lot of traction. And there were actually few people in the comments here who told me that these resources are great as an evergreen thing, but if there was something that we could subscribe to get fresh resources, we would want to do that. And that's where I got the idea of starting a newsletter. I had no idea what a newsletter is, no clue. I just went online, looked up some newsletters. MailChimp came as a service provider. It had a free plan. I just started using that. I didn't really start paying for the email service provider until it actually surpassed the number of subscribers that they have on their free plan. So again, I'm cheap that way. This is the second version of Product Disrupt. Again, I posted this on Product Hunt, and this time I did it on my own because I'd become active enough. And this version, again, it became number 2 product of the day, but it actually had more traction than the first version because Product Hunt was also big at that time. Now you must be thinking this is all good, but what about the other perks? This is not really going to make your career, right? Let me show you the other perks now. This is a message that I received on LinkedIn from the CEO of this company called Sapad. Sapad is quite a profitable food tech company based in Dubai, and they have operations in almost all of Middle East and some Asian countries as well. This guy, somehow he stumbled onto Product Disrupt. From there, he went on my LinkedIn. He also saw my blog. So, of course, it was like a cumulative effect of a lot of things. But he decided to reach out because he had a project in mind and he wanted someone to help with that project. It ended up becoming the 2-year relationship. I was consulting at that time. This was before moving to Berlin. And this opportunity gave me so many different things. It's so hard to describe. I got to work on a project where I was making interfaces for tablets. I was making interfaces for display screens, which is a TV inside a restaurant. So people who work in the kitchen, they have the display screen. When they receive the order, they can see the display screen. They can then start preparing the order. I also created a white label online ordering solution for them. So they sell this solution to restaurants, and it picked up really well in the pandemic time when everyone wanted to go online, and a lot of restaurants they just use the white label solution like this. And they also invited me a few times to Dubai. I got to speak to a lot of restaurants, got to see the inner workings of a restaurant. I was going to a lot of this different types of restaurants, like a quick service, like Burger King, or even a 5-star and fine dining restaurant. And you know what the best part of this user research trip was? Whenever I went to this user research sessions, it was in a restaurant, so they gave me free food. And who doesn't like free food, right? So this is all because of Product Disrupt, I would say. And at that time, working as a consultant, I got opportunities to work at some of the big companies. I didn't end up taking most of them. Uber reached out for a product design position. There's a company called Hotstar. It's owned by Disney in India. They are a very big streaming platform. They also reached out. There's a housing, which is a very big real estate company. It used to be very big. It's known like the company that started the design revolution in India. It doesn't really exist anymore, but it was big at that time. And then ultimately, I landed up in HighGraph. Product Disrupt wasn't the sole reason why I got the job, but it was one of the reasons which helped me get the job. And I've been with HighGraph for about 3.5 years now. Got to build a team here. So it's really hard to describe how a side project can impact the trajectory of your career. It also gave me other perks. I got to speak at many conferences, do online talks and live streamings, and this was before the pandemic, so most of the events were happening in person. I got to visit Doha for a speaker session in front of a corporate audience. To be honest, the audience was so boring. They do not react to anything. You try to crack a joke, they would not react to that. You would never know if the joke landed or not. You guys are at least laughing, right? So I know that if something is working or not. But it was an all expense paid trip to Doha. They paid me a hefty amount of money to give a session to them, which I didn't even prepare. There was the other company who had asked me to do this talk. And I got all these benefits, so I'm not complaining. And I got to do a talk at Dribble Meetup in Mumbai. There was a session in NIT Rourkela, which is a technical institute in India. This is actually a very proud moment for me. So I got to give a talk at IIT in Bombay or Mumbai. There's a story behind this. So when I wanted to get into engineering college, the The entrance exams are very competitive in India, and I had to prepare for that, but I did not have enough money to actually go to a proper coaching class where I could prepare for that. So I gave up on my dreams of going to IIT. But as luck would have it, they invited me to give a talk over there to the students at IIT. So life came full circle again. And then numerous other mentions or talks. I'm here today speaking in front of you people about side projects. This also couldn't have happened if I was not working on this. And of course, Damien brought me here. So thanks a lot, Damien. And now, important message, a very important disclaimer. I would say if you, this is my personal opinion, but I would want you to take this as a disclaimer. When you are thinking of starting a side project, don't just do it for money. I understand that it's very tempting, especially if your aspirations are to become a content creator. Then of course, it's a different path, right? You're thinking about it like work. But side project just need to be something that you do for fun. If you overcomplicate it in the beginning, and if you draft this whole plan about how you're going to make a lot of money from this, chances are it's going to be so hard that you wouldn't even get started. And I told you before, right? We don't want that. Um, Product Disrupt is still relatively smaller if you look at other side projects out there. So I just want you to take a look at some of the projects or products that started as a side project, but now they have become quite a huge company. So Product Hunt, it was also a side project. The founder of Product Hunt, Ryan Hoover, he was very passionate about finding new products on the internet. And after he was finding those resources or new products, he was sharing this with his friends. And then slowly he made it a list. And then slowly it became big enough to qualify as a newsletter. And then soon later, what is soon later? My bad. There's no mixing of phrases like soon later. Um, but eventually he made it into a product. The product started making money. It got acquired by AngelList, and Ryan Hoover had a hefty exit from it. And through that, he also started a angel investment company. And now he's actually an investor in a lot of big startups in Silicon Valley. So I'm sure that guy is swimming in money now. And that's all because of a small side project that he started. Our favorite website on the internet, Unsplash, right? How many of you know that Unsplash was also a side project? The founder, I think the founders of the Unsplash, they used to run a creative agency, a design studio, and when they were working on projects, they used to not always find good stock images for their projects. They had some websites, either they were expensive or they were very repetitive. We all know all these popular memes like hold, hide the pain, Herald, and all these memes, they were all stock photos, right? So they didn't want to use that. They started clicking their own pictures, but after they were done with it, they also made it into a list. They gave it out for free. Then they made it a routine where they would click 10, 15 pictures, I think every month or every week, and they would send it out to people. People started using it. Slowly, they also became a platform to the point where most of the designers have used an Unsplash image in one of their projects. It might change with the AI now. AI allows you to generate your own images, but Unsplash, I don't think they're going anywhere. Now let's get into the practical stuff. Now, you would think that this is all inspiring. I hope now you're thinking that how do you go about starting your own side project? I would say just ask yourself a question. Do you have a problem? We swim in problems in our day-to-day life, and usually the best side projects come from a place where you're trying to solve your own problem. In my example, I had a problem where people were asking me about the same questions. They wanted to learn about design. I was always answering them, but it was not scalable. So I solved my problem by just creating this list. I'll give you another example. In our company, we do this lunch and learn activity every 2 weeks. And it's an alternating format where 1 week we just watch a learning video together. So it could be a session like this or a live stream. And in the other week, we do an activity together. So one of the team members, they would prepare an activity. This could be something like a workshop or a retrospective, brainstorming, any of the activities that they've prepared, which would help the team get together, collaborate on stuff, or even get to know each other. We also do this activity called as Ikigai, Japanese concept, helps you to discover your true passion and your true calling. But the problem that I had with this was we were doing this every fourth week, and of course, we are going to run out of activities at some point. Some of these activities were just taken from the internet, some of them were like our own version. We take something, we create like our own version from it. But every time we come to this activity day, of course, we don't have a lot of time, right? We are all mostly working on other projects, and this is just something that would not take the primary importance, and people are not going to schedule the time to actually work on this. So many a times we end up just opening FigJam and just picking up one of the activities that shows on FigJam over there. And sometimes we do the work and we prepare an activity. But this is a problem that we have. Now, if I'm motivated enough, I might actually just create a website or a list or a Notion dashboard, anything smaller where I just put all of this stuff together. And maybe I put some information about what do I want to achieve, get from this. If my goal is to get to know the team better, then of course I would pick a relevant activity. But then I would have this plethora of activities. So that's one example of a problem. Try thinking of the problems that you have. I'm sure you must be having a lot of problems, right? If that doesn't work for you, try helping your friends. Think if your if friends have a problem that they tell you about. We have some very special skills as designers that a lot of other people don't have. And we can always help them with some of the skills that we have, whether it's visualization or product design or graphic design, brand design. There are so many things that you can help them out with. If they tell you that they have a problem, for example, Damien told you that there's a problem. We don't have enough meetups in enough design meetups in Berlin. That's why the tickets are always sold out, and people cannot really participate, and the community needs that. So this is a problem that you see. Maybe you can start your own side project from it. You can experiment with the format. You do a meetup like this, or you do something else. That's totally fine, right? But you start with something. And if you tell me that you don't have many friends, they don't talk to you that much. The life is very hard. I get that. But you don't have to stop there. You can think, do your friends of friends have a problem? This is where the community gets involved. If you go online, you're part of a community. There's a niche community literally for everything. I once came across a Facebook group. That was a group for rat owners, mouse owners. There are a lot of species of rats, and owners who have that pet, they're very passionate about them, they're very caring, and they have this community where they discuss a lot of things about how to take care of their rat. And amazing, right? And those people would have very specific problems which you and me can never really think about. And you can also just try and help them out. You're someone who loves pets and you have skills. You remember the dialogue from Taken? I'm going to find you. I have very specific skills through which I'm going to hunt you down. Something like that. I will give you some inspiration or some places that you can go to find these problems. There's a community called Indie Hackers. It's a community where a lot of passionate makers like you and me, they are trying to make projects. They are just trying to solve a problem. Of course, this community is focused on bootstrap products where people are making these products to actually make a living from it. You don't have to go that hardcore. At some point, maybe you want to. But by hanging out with this kind of people, you would see the kind of mindset that they have. And of course, they're going to give you a lot of ideas and inspiration. A lot of people over here, they're developers. A lot of times they don't know jack shit about design, and they are always asking for design help. Start with that help. Maybe don't consider it as a freelance project. Consider it as a project where you're actually going to get involved as a co-founder or a side maker or something like that. Then we have Twitter. I think it's called X now. There's a lot happening over there. I don't know if this platform would even exist or not in till the time that I'm completed with this talk. But it still is a place where you find a lot of like-minded people or find a lot of passionate people. My hack to use Twitter is to find people that are sharing the kind of content that you are interested in. And my people are designers and makers. People are who are sharing their work, either from their day-to-day life or things that they have come across in the past. It's more like documenting your journey online. I have created lists on Twitter. It makes my consuming experience a lot better. I just go to those lists and I see tweets from those people. You can either just follow my list, you can just ask me and I will give you the link, or you can create your own. Uh, a very nice way to keep yourself sane and still be inspired. Now let's look at some of the practical tips. I would say that don't go big or you will go home. I've seen many a times with a lot of my friends that they want to work on something, they're so inspired by the idea, but we all have that shiny object syndrome. We see something, we are excited about it for some time, and then the idea slowly just dries off. So in that case, I say that if you are not getting started, it's going to be very hard to sustain that momentum, and then you're going to lose hope, and then you'll just pack your bags and go home. So that's why just start something small. Launch it before it's ready. Um, I made a mistake while working on the second version of Product Disrupt. I spent too much time on it, perfecting it. I realized that I was losing motivation. There were people who were asking me, so there was public accountability. But then I cut down on some scope and I just launched it. I thought in the condition that it was ready to be used. And then, of course, I made some changes later. We have a benefit that when we work on digital products, we can really work on version 2, version 3. It's never really done, right? So you don't really have to make it perfect when you work on something where you have the option to actually make it online. Build relations and grow together. If you join communities, you will meet people who are like-minded. You don't know, you might, the next most significant person in your life could be someone sitting in this room. You can start working with them. You realize that you spend a lot of time with them. A lot can happen, right? Um, so it's about building relationships, not just about building projects. And that's why I always recommend people to either share their work or become a part of these communities, and then you'll find those people. Just get started. If even if one of you starts a side project after this talk, I would think my job here is done. If not, I would have to rethink about what I'm saying. And das ist alles. I'm still learning German, but that's all. Thank you very much. You have been a lovely audience.